If you are in the beginning stages of planning your trip to Portugal and you wanted to just get a sense of like, okay, what is the vibe in the Algarve versus Lisbon, then stick around for this video because I have a ton of details to share around my experience. And if you're new here, hi, I am Brienne, and we are currently going on a journey through all of my 2025 travel extravaganzas, and we've officially landed in Portugal. So for this Portugal trip, this was a trip that I planned for my family. One, because we are now in the habit where we're like, okay, we need to go on at least one international trip a year together. But two, and most importantly, the parentals are of age where it's time to figure out where they're going to sit down once they retire. And quite frankly, the US is not looking like the one or the two. So as the oldest sibling, as the oldest daughter, I also have the esteemed privilege of being the family manager, which means that I take pride. I really do. It doesn't feel like a responsibility, like being serious. I actually genuinely do enjoy bringing us all together and carving out like time for us to truly create new memories together. And so with this trip with this trip coming up, I was like, I want to make sure that we're, yes, having a good time, but I'm also carving out time for my parents to really get a sense and the feel of the different vibes in, the major cities in Portugal. So we started off the trip in the Algarve. We spent 4 days down there. This is a much slower pace. It is honestly, the tourism there was interesting because there's a lot of retirees. There's, of course, like tourists, but it felt as though we stayed in Lagos. Lagos, I think is how the locals pronounced it. But in that area, it was not as like Western. It's still Western. It wasn't as tourist friendly as I expected compared to Lisbon. So you get more of the local feel down there. And one thing that I underestimated was the sheer like length of the coastline and the amount of like breathtaking points that you'll see throughout that coastline, depending on like the orientation towards the sun for like the sunsets, the sunrises, and all of that. It's an absolutely stunning region within Portugal. I will say the water, we went in August, the first week of August. So like, mind you, it's very, very hot outside, but the water itself was cold. And especially for my parents who, are from Jamaica, like they're used to water where you can go from the beach, put your clothes down and literally walk into the water. I'll have to find a video of my dad and maybe I'll share it where he is just like, oh, no, it is too cold here. But nonetheless, like being able to look out into the water and the sunsets, the food down there was really good too. Like I will say that the fresh seafood was definitely something to write home about. The thing that we did not take into account was that this may be, just the Airbnb that we were in. It could be something that is more specific to that region. I'm not sure. But our 3-story Airbnb did not come with centralized AC. And so each room had a fan, but due to how hot it was outside, like we're just circulating hot air. So that's something to keep in mind. Like if you're in, that planning phase, make sure you double, triple check that the Airbnb that you're looking into or hotel does have AC if that's important to you. So we went over, what we did, the vibe, the food. I will say one thing that I found interesting was that there's actually a lot to do down there. So we went fishing for like a full morning, caught over 100 fish. If you plan on doing a fishing trip, I need you to double, triple check that they actually scale and clean and gut out those fish, because in catching over 100 fish, we get off the boat and they have the cooler of fish And we're thinking that they're going to actually scale and clean it. No, they're like, here you go. Great job. You had a great, successful time. And I can't tell you the amount of hours that we spent scaling. I learned for the first time, all of us, my mom, my sisters, and I, we learned for the first time how to scale. We did not do the cleaning out. That was for my dad to do. But my mom was doing the frying. So it was literally, by the time we got to day 3 of the trip, I was like, I don't want to see, smell, hear, touch any fish. But nonetheless, that was, a memorable experience that we will never forget. Several viewpoints to check out. There were some phenomenal restaurants in downtown Lagos that we loved. And yeah, I will say probably a good 4 to 5 days is good for that part of the country. Now for Lisbon, we spent 4 days in Lisbon as well. I feel like we could have done at least a week. Lisbon is such a vibrant, busy, hilly city. And there's just so much to do. I think what I love the most about Lisbon is you can literally wake up and decide. You wake up and you're like, man, I want to go to a local cafe and just sit down and people watch. Or, you can go check out, there's tons of artwork to look at. There's tons of shopping to do. They also have, it's on the coast up there too, so you can do several boat rides. But Lisbon is definitely more for the person who is not afraid to get active, because you will be walking a lot, uphill a lot. But it's also great for someone who wants to truly feel immersed in the culture of Portugal. So from the food to the artwork to the music. And I really deeply valued learning more about what tourism has done to the city of Lisbon, where one of the boutique owners, another caveat, people in Lisbon and Portugal as a whole take their time, their sweet time. And it's we got nothing but time. And so one of the boutiques that we were shopping in, the owner was yeah, 5 years ago, we were not required to speak English. We were not required to acclimate to people who are not Portuguese coming into our city, and knowing that business and bringing in a dollar depended on us being able to meet them where they are, which I thought was very fascinating. The cost of living in Lisbon was way lower than I expected. We actually went a bit north to this city called Peniche because one of my friends, she actually moved from the US to Peniche, and that's one of those cities where a lot of retirees are, and learned that things are even more inexpensive up there, but it is a bit more of a fisherman's town, if I remember correctly. So there's a ton of smaller cities you can go to from Lisbon, which is super helpful. You definitely need a car. But yeah, we did Peniche. We did, starts with an O, Obidash, I think was the name of it. But it's a castle town that was super cool as well. And then yeah, we did all of that in one day, and then we spent the majority of the time actually on foot in Lisbon. So again, food is incredible. There's actually a much higher population of Black people in Lisbon. So running into, whether it was tourists or whether it was people who had just moved there, it was really cool just to pick people's brain around their experience, and especially those who had moved there, okay, as a Black woman, what was your experience going from the US to Lisbon? So there's a huge component of the African diaspora that is both an educational kind of excursion, as well as, there's plenty of African restaurants. We did go to Sophia's place, I think was the name of it. Beautiful, but everything was just none of us were ready to leave Lisbon. And I think that was the city that really grabbed our hearts the most. And I will also say, for people who are a bit younger, there's a lot more to do when it comes to bars and, you know, nightlife and all of that jazz. So if that's something that you and the people that you're planning with are also prioritizing, definitely something to keep in mind. I can't speak for Porto. That was a city that was on our list, but just like from, you know, budget and time, we were not able to make it up there. I don't regret not going there, honestly. Maybe that's something we can look into in the future. But between Lisbon and the Algarve, if I had to choose one, I would 1000% recommend Lisbon. And, you know, I think the Algarve has like its special gems and, you know, landmarks that it's known for. But yeah, and those are beautiful to see. Like, I can't discount how stunning those were to see in the flesh. But yeah, if you only had 5 days, 1000% recommend Lisbon. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. For this next full week, I'll be going over different components of my experience in Portugal. So be sure to drop those comments so I can address them. But otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Bye.